रशिया और यूक्रेन के विवाद पर बात करने के लिए हमारे साथ एक्सक्लूसिवली यूरोप के सबसे ताकतवर देश जर्मनी के एम्बेसडर, भारत में राजदूत एम्बेसडर वॉल्टर साहब हैं. थैंक यू वेरी मच एम्बेसडर फॉर गिविंग टाइम टू ABP न्यूज़. सर, I saw your tweet in the morning where you say the world today is looking at the UN General Assembly. It is the opportunity to stand up for peace, international law and democratic values. The vote has to happen tonight. What do you expect from it?
Well, it would be a vast majority, of course, but the problem or the challenge will be to have as many as possible yes votes there, because I think it's not about Europe, it's not about the Ukraine, it's about the whole world. If we let an aggressor proceed like Putin is doing, attacking brutally on a neighboring, peacefully democratic elected country, then we all lose, because today it's Ukraine, tomorrow it's some other place in the world. Most of the countries have a stronger neighbor. So what do we do in future is the use of force now the new rule of the day, and that's what the vote is today all about, that we maintain and we keep up the international peaceful order and the peaceful coexistence and the solving of problems through peaceful means.
Ambassador, yesterday I was doing an interview with the Romanian ambassador to India, and I did ask her also that would she want India to reconsider its position at the UN. And I would like to also ask you, more than one number of times India has abstained. Do you think India needs to review its position today?
You know, India is a huge country and has a great diplomacy, so they know what to do. I'm not the person who gives advices, or neither is Germany or other countries. I think every country has to consider its own positions and its own democratic and its own geographic situation. But as I said, this is a vote where we expect a vast majority, because it's not a vote about violation of international law. Just it's a vote which determines the future decades to come. Will we have an international community which is respecting international law, or will we have the use of force, as Putin did it all the time? So this sends a precedent which we want to avoid, and that's the vote is all about today.
Sir, I would also like to ask you, you are about to take Ukraine in the EU. You think, sir, this can lead to the solution to the problem, or it can escalate things further because Putin is against the idea?
The problem is not the EU, the problem is not the NATO, the problem is Mr. Putin. Because he is attacking, his own decision was to attack. After a lot of lies, he said this is just a maneuver, and the maneuver came into, the reality was he was attacking. Then he said he will protect the Russian-speaking minority in Ukraine, and now you see he's bombing everyone in the Ukraine, or Russian-speaking or Hindi-speaking or some other language-speaking. And he said these are peacekeeping troops, and you see these troops are now a convoy of 64 kilometers is rolling towards Kiev, not bringing flowers and water and whatever, but he's bringing death and destruction. So that's why the solution is not that the EU or NATO decides anything. The solution is that Mr. Putin stops the war and calls his troops back.
As I speak to you, just yesterday that unfortunate incident, and an Indian lost his life. And I have been told that there have been multiple number of bomb attacks on the Kharkiv. They are leading towards Kiev. You think this situation can still be handled?
We hope so. I mean, if we give up hope, then we have thousands of dead people in all these cities. It's not only the Indians which are under threat, but a lot of other students from other nations are also under threat. So, and let's not forget these bombs don't rain out of the blue sky. They come from Russian bombers, and the tanks Russian tanks have this munition. So it's not that these students and people and families run into the shelters, into the bomb shelters, or into the subway stations, or Indians across the border out of nothing. They run away from these bombs, not from an earthquake and not from a pandemic.
So, the way Russian president has been acting, the world community is trying its best to put pressure on Mr. Putin to go back. We have seen both Ukraine and Russia hold one round of talks, and probably they are slated to meet again. Anything expected out of it? You think this can work?
Well, we are always in favor of talks. Talk is always better than a war. War has to be avoided. Every second as we speak here, people die in Ukraine. We have to avoid this. So talks are always good. But of course, for talks you need two sides which are willing to seriously talk. Now this is now up to the Ukrainian delegation to see whether the Russian side is seriously talking there. One would be skeptical when one notes the Russian behavior so far was not very promising, but I'm still open and hopeful that talks bring a solution, because that's the only solution we have.
We did notice while the talks were on, Russia was still bombing Ukraine.
Yeah, you say it. That's what I'm saying. You need some serious commitment to talks. But thank God the Ukraine side went there, and they are also trying everything, because it's their people who mostly die. If there's a bombarding, or if this convoy of 64 kilometers tanks rolls to Kiev, it's mostly the Ukrainians which will suffer, will be dying, and these scenes which we have seen so far are very difficult to digest. And I don't understand a president of a great nation, Russia, seeing these scenes and cold-heartedly say we continue. How can he do this? It's difficult to grasp for me.
So the U.S. President today announced that they are closing the airspace for Russia. You think such kind of sanctions were actually needed?
Of course. I mean, all the toughest sanctions are needed now, because we have to make Putin realize that maybe not, he will maybe not overnight change his position, but he will notice in the middle range or in the long run that he's ruining his own country and his own people. I hear reports that there are so many people within Russia who want to protest, and who protest risking their own life. And newspapers write about this, but they are then put into jail. So I think people in the street in Moscow and everywhere in Russia, they notice now this war comes closer. And this is just because their president is such a person who decides unilaterally to attack. So maybe it's some reason maybe this changes his position, but I'm doubtful, because he's not that easy to convince.
You suspect a threat of a nuclear war, because as we are told, he has put his nuclear arsenals at the highest level alert.
No, we should be very careful with nuclear war. Germans have been in the center of 2 world wars. And the Second World War ended with a nuclear bomb. And we had Nazi regime, and we know how military can go out of hand. So if even too much talk about this is happening, if we get used to the thought, there might be a Third World War or a nuclear attack, let's be careful, because this is the worst scenario we can imagine. Nobody on this planet can have an interest in it.
Sir, I would just last 2 quick questions. Do you at the hindsight think that an initial action from maybe perhaps United States or the NATO countries militarily could have prevented this situation?
We are not warmongers. Nobody wanted an interruption of peace. The NATO is a defense mechanism. So Putin said he needs 150,000 troops around Ukraine for a military maneuver. We said, we don't believe you, but if you say so, many of us could not believe that he is lying into our faces, saying this is a maneuver, and in reality he was using it to prepare his aggression there. So I think in the hindsight there will be lessons learned, I guess, out of this, but right now we have to talk about here and now. We have to stop this bloodshed, because as we speak people are dying, and we have to stop this.
So just one last question. What if Russia decides to stop oil and gas supply to the Europe? How do you face that situation?
I mean, we are prepared for everything, because you have seen we have put on the table already very harsh sanctions, especially for Germany. These sanctions are economically pretty harsh, from the Nord Stream 2, which is a pipeline, to the increase of our military budget, to the delivery of arms, to blocking the airspace, to all kind of sanctions. We have done a lot already, but we can do even more. We have to make Putin realize that this is not having a good end for him.
You think he will?
I'm an optimist. Let's hope. Let's hope.
थैंक यू वेरी मच एम्बेसडर फॉर टॉकिंग टू एबीपी न्यूज़, वेरी थैंकफुल। भारत में जर्मनी के राजदूत एम्बेसडर वॉल्टर, इनका कहना है कि तमाम सैंक्शंस लगा करके पुतिन पर इस बात का दबाव बनाने की कोशिश है वर्ल्ड कम्युनिटी की कि वो अपने कदम वॉर से पीछे खींचे, और बहुत क्रूशियल रहने वाला है आज का यूनाइटेड नेशंस का वोट। सभी देशों को इस बात को फैक्टर इन करके वोट करना चाहिए कि एक प्रेसिडेंट सेट करने वाला है। कैमरामैन सुंदर के साथ आशीष कुमार सिंह, एबीपी न्यूज़, दिल्ली।